Griffith is one of the most captivating characters you'll ever encounter in Berserk. He had everything going for him: stunning good looks, natural charisma, and an unshakable ambition, one that destiny carves for him towards greatness. His followers didn't just see him as their leader, they saw him as their hopes and dreams, walking around in human form. But buckle up, because the Shining Golden Boy's story takes such a dark turn that he ends up becoming one of anime's most hated villains. Griffith started life at rock bottom. Born into poverty, he couldn't even scrape together enough coins for a piece of bread. He was just a kid playing in dirty alleyways, collecting discarded trinkets and treating them like precious treasure. But even as a child, Griffith was different from the other street kids. While they played their games, he stirred up at the massive castle looming over their slums. Those moments planted something deep in his mind, the burning desire to claim his own kingdom, his ultimate dream. His path to greatness got a mystical boost when an old fortune teller handed him a crimson bailet, prophesying that he'd conquer the world. As he grew older, Griffith gathered his first followers to form the Band of the Falcon. His original crew included Pippin the Miner, Corcus the former bandit, and Judo the Tumbler. Not exactly your typical army material, but they believed in him. The band's early days involved scrounging for war funds, but Griffith's moral compass showed itself during a crucial moment. He stumbled upon a 12-year-old girl named Casca being assaulted by some entitled noblemen. Without hesitation, he stepped in and sliced off the attacker's ear. Instead of finishing the job himself, he tossed Casca his sword and told her to use it if she had something worth protecting. When the nobleman attacked her, she grabbed the sword and her assailant accidentally fell on the blade. After killing the nobleman, Casca's fate was sealed. She joined Griffith's growing band immediately. The Band of the Falcon's big breakthrough came through a deal with Genon, a wealthy Tudor lord with some very special appetites. Griffith realized this perverted nobleman was attracted to him and saw an opportunity. In what had to be one of the most calculated sacrifices ever made, he sold his body to Genon in exchange for substantial funding his band needed to survive and thrive. Fast forward several years, and the Band of the Falcon had grown into a legitimate mercenary force. They were hired to defend a military garrison that had been under siege for 3 months. Everything changed when a young mercenary named Guts showed up and defeated the legendary warrior Bazuso. This victory shattered the garrison soldiers' morale so completely that they just packed it up and left. The next day, some of Griffith's men spotted Guts near their camp and decided to claim his bounty. Big mistake though. One by one, they fell to Guts' overwhelming skill, until even Casca found herself completely outmatched. That's when Griffith made his entrance, intercepting Guts' attack with perfect timing. He tried talking first, but when words failed, he dismantled Guts completely, leaving the swordsman unconscious and defeated. Intrigued by this mysterious warrior, he had Guts brought to their camp and ordered Casca to share her warmth with the injured man. When Guts warmed up, Griffith made his pitch for recruitment, but Guts wasn't interested. So they settled it the old-fashioned way. With a duel, Guts proposed simple terms. If Griffith won, he'd join the band. If Griffith lost, he'd take a wound to match the one he had given Guts. Griffith accepted and proceeded to dislocate Guts' arm, officially making him a member of the Band of the Falcon. The relationship developed quickly. During a night raid, he put Guts in charge of the rear guard while he led the main assault, destroying enemy tents before reinforcements could arrive. When he learned that Guts was still engaged with enemy forces, he personally rode out with Judo and Pippin to rescue him. Later, during their victory celebration, he noticed Guts sitting alone and smiled when Pippin dragged the reluctant warrior into the festivities. The next day brought a surprisingly playful moment between the two. Guts found him while showering, and they ended up in an impromptu water fight. During their conversation, Guts noticed the strange necklace he was wearing, the bailet from the fortune teller. He opened up about his ultimate goal of ruling his own kingdom and made a declaration that would prove prophetic. Guts belonged to him, and he alone would decide where Guts would die. Their bond deepened during subsequent battles. At one point, he found Guts buried under a pile of enemy corpses and got impressed by his subordinate's incredible survival instincts. Not long after, he designated Guts as the captain of the band's raider unit. With Guts quickly gaining his favor, some members, particularly Casca and Corcus, grew jealous of the newcomer. While Casca never liked the idea of Guts joining the band, she didn't resort to some shoddy tactics to get rid of him, unlike Corcus. At some point, Griffith even shared his thoughts to Guts about destiny and what it meant to be the true elite, admitting that Guts was the first person he'd ever discussed such deep topics with. 3 years later, the Band of the Falcon had proven themselves so valuable that they were hired full-time by the Kingdom of Midland for their century-long war against Tudor. At this point, Griffith had been renowned as the White Falcon. Their successful defense against the Black Ram Iron Lance heavy cavalry earned him a knighthood and the title of Viscount. putting him among the Midland nobility and one step closer to his dream. During the siege of a Tudor stronghold, Griffith received word about a powerful enemy leader preventing their final push. He rode out to investigate and arrived just in time to save Guts from a terrifying creature called Zod the Immortal. This wasn't just any enemy. Zod was an apostle, a being far beyond human capabilities. Griffith ordered his men to retreat as Zod slaughtered anyone who interfered, and then cleverly maneuvered to help Guts escape. The two warriors managed a coordinated attack on Zod, with Griffith successfully severing the beast's arm, but Zod retaliated by whipping Griffith into a stone pillar with his tail, knocking him unconscious. Just as the creature moved in for the kill, he spotted Griffith's bayonet and froze in recognition. Zod called it the Egg of the King, and rather than finishing them off, he departed with a cryptic warning to Guts. If Griffith's dream ever collapsed, an inescapable doom would follow. Back in Windham, recovering from his injuries, Griffith found Guts training on the castle terrace. Their encounter with Zod had gotten him thinking about forces beyond human understanding. When Guts asked why he would risk his life for a mere soldier, he deflected with his own question about whether he needed a reason every time he risked his life for Guts. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the King of Midland and his brother Julius, who led the White Dragon Knights. Griffith met the king's shy daughter, Princess Charlotte, catching her when she stumbled on the terrace steps. This innocent contact earned him a slap from Julius, to which Griffith offered an insincere apology. During the autumn hunt, where the band of the Falcon served as the king's guard, Griffith had a meaningful conversation with Charlotte about human nature and taught her how to use a leaf as a musical instrument. Their peaceful moment was shattered when a wild boar spooked Charlotte's horse, separating them from the hunting party. After Griffith calmed the situation, someone shot him with a crossbow from the underbush. His bayonet deflected what turned out to be a poisoned arrow. The expensive and lethal nature of this poison told Griffith everything he needed to know. General Julius was behind the assassination attempt. After gathering evidence to confirm his suspicions, Griffith made a cold calculation. He commissioned Guts to discreetly assassinate Julius while he attended Charlotte's dinner party at Primrose Hall. Outside the party, he had a deep conversation with the princess about friendship and ideals. Guts, who had successfully assassinated Julius but accidentally killed Julius' son in the process, desolately returned to talk to Griffith, but Casca stopped him. From there, Guts overheard Griffith said that the one he considers a true friend is someone who has his own dream and doesn't cling to someone else's dream. This gave Guts the impression that Griffith doesn't consider him a friend at all, and that he could never stand beside Griffith as his equal, unless he creates his own path and chases his own dream. The conversation between Griffith and Charlotte was cut short by news of Julius and his younger son's Adonis's death, which everyone assumed was the work of Tudor spies. Griffith was delighted by how perfectly his plan worked. Minister Faust later approached Griffith trying to figure out what he knew about the assassination. The minister even hinted at a plot against Griffith himself, but his information gathering proved useless. Griffith saw right through the attempt and showed no concern about the implied threat. Before departing for his next battle, Charlotte gave him a male lodestone, hoping its female counterpart would guide him safely home. The band of the Falcon engaged the Blue Whale Knights of Tudor, and during the battle, he learned that Guts and Casca had fallen from a cliff. When the nobleman advised him not to waste the king's soldiers searching for two mercenaries, he ignored them completely, insisting that Guts and Casca were vital members whom he refused to lose. When his men found Guts and Casca, Guts had already taken care of more than 100 enemies and both returned to their camp safely. That night, Guts had a talk with Casca and hinted about his resignation from the band. Griffith arrived from a council meeting and welcomed the two back. Casca, who had devoted her whole life to Griffith and no other else, was saddened by the fact that Guts was considering leaving them. The War Council followed their victory, focusing on reclaiming the stronghold of Doldry, currently held by Guinan during the Tudor Civil War. As military officials dismissed strategy after strategy, they finally asked Griffith for his opinion. With complete confidence, he stated that he could reclaim the stronghold if ordered by the king. This surprised everyone, especially considering that even Midland's strongest force, the White Tiger Knights, had failed at this task. But Griffith's confidence convinced the king to give the band of the Falcon the mission. At Doldry, Griffith split his forces strategically. He and Guts will lure the Purple Rhino Knights towards the river, while Casca led a separate force to infiltrate and retake the stronghold. During the intense battle, he watched anxiously as Guts dueled the enemy commander Bosgon and started losing after the enemy cut his sword in half. At the crucial moment, Zod, who was watching the battle from a distance, threw a replacement sword to Guts, enabling him to behead his opponent. When the Purple Rhino Knights saw that Doldry had fallen to the band of the Falcon, their morale crumbled completely. As the battle ended and Tudor forces scattered, Griffith approached Governor Guinan, who had foolishly entered the battle, hoping to capture his former lover. When Ginnon begged for another night together, Griffith coldly informed him that he had been nothing more than a means to an end. To prevent any rumors from spreading, he killed Ginnon by piercing his skull. Their victorious return to Midland brought about abundant praise and grand victory celebration, but he wasn't just content to enjoy the party. He had political enemies to eliminate. His plan was elaborate and ruthless. First, he abducted Minister Foss's daughter to ensure the minister's cooperation, then ordered Foss to gather all court members who held grudges against him in one location. Knowing the Queen of Midland planned to poison his drink, he spiked his own goblet with a special substance that would temporarily fake his death. At the victory ball, the king proclaimed the end of the 100-Year War, elevated the Band of the Falcon to the White Phoenix Knights, and gave Griffith the title of the White Phoenix General. During the celebratory toast, Griffith drank from his goblet and collapsed, apparently dead. Once the fake poison wore off, Griffith looked at all his political enemies in the tower where they had gathered to celebrate his apparent death and set the entire structure on fire. When the queen approached the window, she was horrified to see Griffith standing calmly before the burning tower. He delivered a chilling reminder that the battlefield offers no spectator seats before leaving to meet with Foss nearby. When Foss asked how Griffith had known about the plot, Griffith recalled their first meeting, explaining that the fear in Foss's eyes had revealed his malicious intentions. With the political threat eliminated, he returned Foss's daughter and expressed hope for better relations in the future. After paying off the men who had helped with the abduction, he had Guts eliminate them to tie up loose ends. Before rejoining his comrades, he asked Guts whether he thought of him as cruel. Guts reminded him that such schemes were necessary to achieve his dream, and he agreed. 1 month later, everything changed. He learned that Guts was leaving the Band of the Falcon. He intercepted his departing friend and challenged him to a duel for his freedom, just as he had 3 years earlier. But this time, Guts is calm, collected, and nothing like the reckless fighter he once knew. Realizing Guts had grown stronger, he knew he had to finish the fight in one clean move, deflect the strike and land a hit. If Guts dies, so be it. The clash happens in a flash, but it ends instantly. Guts' raw strength snaps his sword in half, and he stops his blade just inches from his shoulder. Dropping to his knees, Griffith feels completely crushed. Guts simply sheaths his sword and walks away without looking back. In that moment, it wasn't just Griffith's sword that broke, it was his pride, shattered beyond repair. That night, consumed by his loss and emotional turmoil, Griffith made a catastrophic decision. He sought out Princess Charlotte and seduced her, spending the night in her bed before leaving the next morning. Outside the palace, Midland guards arrested him for treason. They dragged him to a torture chamber where the king himself took revenge, repeatedly whipping him while berating him for betraying his trust and defiling Charlotte. Griffith made his situation infinitely worse by deducing the king's inappropriate desires for his own daughter and declaring that his reign had been nothing but worthless stagnation. Enraged beyond reason, the king ordered a full year of torture, specifically demanding that Griffith suffer for as long as possible. The torturer then stabs his torso with metal spikes, while avoiding his vitals to prevent him from dying. He couldn't do anything when his torturer threw away his bayonet before burning his skin with hot irons. For an entire year, he endured unimaginable torment. His tongue was cut out, his tendons were severed, his skin was flayed, and he was scalded repeatedly. Between torture sessions, he lay in darkness, sustained only by thoughts of his dreams and memories of Guts. During his darkest moments, he experienced visions of demonic figures who called him the Blessed King of Longing and claimed to be his kinsman, promising to meet him at the proper time and place. A year later, a rescue team consisting of Guts, Casca, Judo, and Pippin arrived, with Princess Charlotte's help, to break him out the Tower of Rebirth. There, they found his emaciated and mangled body with the tendons in his arm and leg slashed and his tongue cut. When he awoke to see a grief-stricken Guts, he feebly attempted to strangle him, stopping only when he saw the regret in Guts' eyes. The torturer later revealed what he did to Griffith during his time in that dungeon. Aside from cutting his tendons and burning him with hot irons, he also soaked him in boiling water. He then cut his tongue and wears it as an amulet and peels off his skin, particularly his face, to marvel at the muscles and blood vessels within. He would pull out his nails and do it again when they grew back. After learning the horrific details of Griffith's torture, Guts killed the jailer in rage. The group fought their way through Midland soldiers and escaped through the underground sewers. In the sewers, 5 Bakiraka assassins attacked them, sent specifically by the king to kill Griffith. After eliminating 4 of the assassins and escaping the city, the rescue team retreated to a nearby farm. But their troubles weren't over. The Black Dog Knights were pursuing them by the king's command. Despite setting numerous traps, the Knight continued their relentless chase until the Band of the Falcon was forced to engage them directly. As Guts battled their leader, Wild, who would also happen to be an apostle, The crippled Griffith could only watch, helplessly, unable to even grip his sword. When Guts seemed to have won, Wild suddenly revived and grabbed Griffith, exposing the full extent of his devastating injuries to everyone. Wild mocked the mercenaries' hopes of restoring Griffith to his former glory, and demanded that he summon the God Hand, only to realize that he no longer possesses the Crimson Bayonet. Just as Wild moved to kill Griffith, Zod intervened and tore Wild in two. Before flying away, Zod told Griffith that his Crimson Bayonet would soon return to him. At the Midland border, the band of the Falcon finally faced the devastating truth about Griffith's condition. He would never lead them again. The band's Raider unit then pledges their loyalty to Guts, putting him as their new leader. When Casca went to change Griffith's bandages, he tried to force himself on her, but his broken body couldn't follow through on his desperation. Eventually, she embraced him out of pity, and he gave up the attempt. Shortly after, he overheard a conversation between Guts and Casca, learning that they had heard his conversation with Charlotte when he spoke about friendship. He also heard Casca turning down Guts' proposal to leave with him. She was set on staying behind with Griffith and taking care of him, while urging Guts to leave and continue searching for his dream if he truly considered himself Griffith's friend. Tormented by a vision of his former self, Griffith found the strength to commandeer an unattended horse carriage, chasing an illusion of the castle from his childhood dreams. The cart crashed into a lake, sending him flying through the air. For a brief moment, he envisioned a peaceful life with Casca, before plunging into the water below. Laughing maniacally at his own pathetic state, he tried to end his misery by puncturing his throat on a sharp tree root, but only managed to inflict a minor cut. As he sat facing the water, unable to commit to ending his suffering, his Crimson Bayonet surfaced from the lake bed. Blood from his neck wound ran down his arm and touched the bayonet, causing the mystical object to come alive. The band members who had followed him arrived just as the solar eclipse began, and demonic figures appeared. Unable to speak a warning, Griffith and his comrades, except for Rickard who wasn't there at the time, were suddenly transported to another dimension. As Guts helped him to his feet, demons revealed they were inside the Eclipse. From the depths of this otherworldly realm, 4 members of the God Hand manifested, with the tallest welcoming the band of the Falcon to what they called the Nocturnal Festival. They revealed that Griffith's transformation into one of their ranks had been predetermined by causality itself, but his rebirth as a member of the God Hand required a sacrifice, one that Griffith himself had to choose willingly. He was taken deep into his own consciousness, forced to confront his dream and everything he'd done to pursue it. Viewing the massive pile of corpses representing all those who had died fighting for his dream, Griffith reached a terrible realization. Pursuing his ambition had always required such sacrifices. Stopping now would mean all those deaths had been meaningless, and his dream would remain unfulfilled. In deciding whether to make the ultimate sacrifice, he concluded that he had effectively been making this choice repeatedly throughout his life. Accepting who he truly was and acknowledging Guts as the only person who had ever made him forget his dream, he embraced the consequences of his ambition. He spoke the words that would damn them all. "I sacrifice." Instantly, his comrades were branded for death. What followed was a complete slaughter as countless apostles murdered nearly every member of the Band of the Falcon, their deaths serving as the price for his transformation. The apostles turned the massacre into a twisted feast, tearing through soldiers, devouring, crushing, and ripping them apart without mercy. Griffith's consciousness descended into the abyss, where he learned about human nature, causality, and his ultimate role in the grand design of the supreme being that the God Hand served. After all but Guts and Casca lay dead, the reborn Griffith emerged with his new identity as Femto, the 5th member of the God Hand. He descended towards the trapped Guts, and gestured for a demon to bring Casca to him. In the ultimate act of betrayal, Femto violated Casca while forcing Guts to watch, breaking both survivors in ways that went far beyond physical damage. The Skull Knight suddenly invaded the Eclipse, interrupting Femto's assault. The newly transformed Demon Lord used his incredible powers to create a gravity well of demons around the mysterious knight, but the Skull Knight escaped the Eclipse unharmed, taking both Guts and Casca with him. Despite this interruption, the God Hand celebrated Femto's birth and concluded the eclipse by ushering in a new age of darkness, proclaiming that every darkness shall eclipse light. Being this massive astral entity, Femto can just show up in the physical world whenever he wants. He can only take the shape within interdimensional spaces. 2 years after the eclipse went down, the Count gets mortally wounded by Guts during his quest to purge all apostles. To save himself, the Count activates his Bayonet and calls upon the God Hand for his second reincarnation. Guts sees Femto again and loses it, attacking Femto straight up, but gets knocked back by his space-bending abilities. Femto tells the Count he just needs to sacrifice his daughter, Teresa, to get a new life. The Count can't bring himself to do it and gets dragged into the abyss. Guts makes one last desperate move, firing his cannon arm at Femto, but the attack just bounces off. With the Count dead, the interdimensional space collapses, and the God Hand vanishes, leaving Guts with the harsh realization of Femto's superiority over him. At this point, all sorts of chaos breaks loose. Plagues, the Kushan forces invading Midland, and the Mad King spending his last days obsessively hunting for Griffith. Everyone in Midland starts having the same dream about a savior called the Falcon of Light coming to help them. Refugees flood into the ruined city of Albion, where this egg-shaped apostle lives. They have no idea that they're setting themselves up as a mass sacrifice for something like the eclipse, calling the Incarnation Ceremony, which will let Femto take physical form in the world of man. As the Falcon of Light, Femto shows up to Zod in a vision, wounds him on a spiritual level to make him obedient, and tells him to head to Albion. Meanwhile, in Albion, chaos erupts when the Holy See Inquisitor Mozgus was turned into a pseudo-apostle by the egg-shaped apostle and captures Casca to be burned at the stake, accusing her as the ringleader of the heretics. While Guts and Mozgus clash in an intense fight, the egg-shaped apostle was found by the Skull Knight and got severely wounded before it escaped. On the verge of death, the egg-shaped apostle climbed up the crumbling Tower of Conviction and comes across the dying demon child, the tainted offspring of Guts and Casca. Out of compassion, the apostle swallows the child, and that triggers the Incarnation Ceremony. Realizing that the demon child is the vessel for the Falcon of Light, the egg-shaped apostle accepts its role for this event and performs the Incarnation Ceremony. All the restless spirits of Albion's dead swarm the tower, flowing towards the egg-shaped apostle. The demon infant inside gets healed of its deformities and merges with Femto's essence in this rapidly growing physical body. When the egg-shaped apostle hatches and the sacrificial ceremony finishes, an incarnated Femto emerges at sunrise looking exactly like Griffith. He has now assumed a physical body and can now exist in the physical world to make his ultimate dream a reality. Zod appears and takes him away before Guts and the Kushan soldiers trying to capture him can reach them. Right after his incarnation, Griffith meets up with Rickard and Guts at the Hill of Swords. Even surrounded by all the grave markers of his sacrificial comrades, he says he feels absolutely nothing. This makes Guts furious, and he charges at him, but Zod deflects him, starting an intense fight between the two. Griffith thought his emotions were completely frozen, but he felt this faint throbbing in his heart. He figures out these feelings belong to the infant that merged into his body. The battle between Guts and Zod ends up destroying Godo's mind just as Casca shows up. When flying rocks from Zod rampage head towards Casca, Griffith steps in and saves her from certain death. Right after that, he tells Zod to stop fighting and leaves to make his dream come true. Before going, he tells Rickard and Guts that nothing has changed between them. He invites Rickard to join him in chasing the dream and reminds Guts that he should know exactly what kind of person he has always been. Griffith then travels to Shet, a western city under siege by the Kushan forces. He appears in the city on horseback like he materialized out of nowhere, walks up to the unit's general, and kills him by piercing his eye. The Kushan soldiers fire a bunch of arrows at him, but they all miss. Before they can shoot again, Zod shows up and completely destroys the unit in a bloody massacre. A stray lance wielded by the Moonlight Knight Locust cuts down another group of Kushan soldiers. Locust says an oracle guided him there and asks to join Griffith's ranks. Griffith accepts. While the destruction of the Kushan unit continues, two big Kushans attack Griffith from behind. They get knocked back by Rakshas, an exiled Bakiraka assassin who offered to help. He says he won't let anyone harm the White Falcon because he wants to be the one to cut off his head someday. Suddenly, the legendary knight in armor, Grunbeld, breaks through the fortress gate and single-handedly wipes out a whole division of Kushan forces with his scale-covered cannon and warhammer. The four apostles quickly finish off the entire Kushan unit and then kneel before Griffith, pledging their loyalty to him. A young prophetess named Sonya, who had been held captive by the Kushans, prophesied the arrival of the Falcon of Light to liberate them, and when her prediction came true, she joined Griffith's new band of the Falcon and served as their medium. While Guts reluctantly assembles his own Black Swordsman party to join him on his journey, Griffith and his new band of the Falcon kept liberating Midland areas under Kushan control, led by Emperor Ganishka, who is also an apostle. They managed to rescue Princess Charlotte from Ganishka's capture. After saving the princess, he sends Sonya and a young noble named Mule to get the pontiff of the Holy See, who received a prophetic vision of the Falcon of Light. The Kushan Imperial Army attacks the holy port city of Vertanis, overwhelming the Holy See Alliance forces. Just when everything seems hopeless, the Band of the Falcon joins the battle, stops the siege, and reduces the Kushan army. Griffith enters Ganishka's palace, subdues the Emperor, and agrees to have their final battle and win him, forcing the Emperor to pull back his forces. After successfully defending the city, Charlotte announces her engagement to Griffith and makes him supreme commander of the Midland Regular Army. The wealthy nobleman, Federico de Vendemian, argues against Midland having complete control over Holy See forces on his territory, suggesting instead an alliance between Midland and the other Holy See nations under the Pontiff's authority. The Pontiff arrives, confirms Griffith's role as the prophesied Falcon of Light, and pledges his allegiance. After being forced to retreat from Britannis and feeling frustrated by Griffith's victory, Ganishka lowers himself into the man-made Beherit to go beyond being an apostle. In his mist form, he sacrifices all the monsters and Kushans in Wyndham. This makes him reincarnate a second time as this massive otherworldly horror. He turns into a towering monster with dozens of tentacle-like arms, so massive that Wyndham's tallest towers look tiny compared to his feet, and his head is literally lost in the clouds. Ganishka stomps towards the band of the Falcon, while crushing his own soldiers like ants as he goes. Griffith's forces fight off the Emperor's spawns, while he rides Zod to face Ganishka directly. In his release form, Femto approaches Ganishka but gets ambushed by the Skull Knight, who tries to strike him with the Sword of Balits. Femto reveals he saw the Skull Knight's interference coming and redirects the space-cutting sword strike to Ganishka instead. This causes Ganishka's twice reincarnated form to split open, triggering the Great Wave of the Astral World and making the physical and astral realms merge together, creating Fantasia. After the Great Wave, the massive world tree sprouted where Ganishka once stood, and right at its base, a magnificent city suddenly rose up on the ruins of King Gysiric's old Wyndham. Coming down in human form on top of Zod, Griffith leads his followers towards his newly risen capital city, Falconia. Griffith's new kingdom is basically the last safe spot left for humanity after the astral and physical worlds merge. It's the one place where people can actually live in peace, sheltered from the hordes of astral monsters now running wild outside of its walls. After the Great Wave brought astral creatures flooding into the new world, people from all over rushed to Falconia, seeking safety behind its walls. When Griffith learns Rickard has arrived in Falconia, Griffith welcomes him to his palace and asks if Rickard still shares his dream. Rickard feels torn between the miracles and horrible acts his former leader has caused, and he slaps Griffith. While Rickard admits he can never truly hate him, he tells Griffith he follows the White Falcon he once knew and the original Band of the Falcon, not the Falcon of Light standing before him now. Griffith stops his guards from attacking Rickard, lets him leave, and reassures everyone present that it was just a simple rejection. Griffith and the Band of the Falcon begin to reclaim Midland territories lost to the astral beings in Fantasia, starting with the army of Jotnar. These giants have been slaughtering humans, devouring them, and stealing their belongings to use as weapons and armor. Griffith orders his apostles to clash with the Jotnar head-on, while Falconia's human forces bombard them with cannon fire. The Giant King responds by unleashing a massive hydra. Zod tears into the beast, Irvine supports with arrows, and Grunbeld incinerates it with its fire breath. Griffith seizes the moments, leaping from Grunbeld's back and striking his sword through the Jotnar leader's eyes, killing him instantly. Sonya projects the image of the fallen king across the battlefield, breaking the giants' morale. With their leader gone, the Band of the Falcon wipes out the remaining Jotnar. Back in Falconia, Griffith reveals his vision for Midland to the council members of Falconia, creating an expansive territory for humanity, a second empire that will succeed Gysiric's ancient empire. During a full moon night, Griffith noticed some strands of his hair have turned darker. Expecting something specific to happen on this night, he disappears shortly after. Meanwhile, Guts and his crew are on their way to Elfhelm to find the Flowerstorm Monarch. The psychological trauma of the eclipse had caused Casca to regress into an infantile state. The Skull Knight advised Guts to search for the Queen of Elves ruling over Elfhelm, aka the Flowerstorm Monarch, who has the power to mend fragmented minds, which could help Casca restore her memories and sanity. On nights of a full moon, a mysterious mute boy appears to Guts and his party then disappears by the following morning. Named the Moonlight Boy, he appears again before Guts on Elfhelm right after Casca has reclaimed her memories and is currently recovering mentally. The ruler Donnan figures out that the child has an odd of innocence, similar to elves, and can enter the domain because he means no harm. When the boy stays with Casca, she feels familiar with the child, remembering him being by her side in Albion. After spending the night with the child asleep in her arms, Casca wakes up to find him gone. Outside, Guts approaches the child, whose black hair starts turning white. Guts watches in shock as the boy grows in the Griffith's form. When Casca sees Griffith's face, her memories come flooding back, and her brand of sacrifice starts bleeding heavily, sending her into shock. Guts attacks Griffith, but his strikes just pass right through him as he approaches Casca, while Zod briefly holds Guts back. Griffith reaches for an unconscious Casca, and an enraged Guts lunges to strike him down. But Guts stops his sword just above his shoulder when he sees Griffith holding Casca in his arms. As the earth of Skellig starts collapsing, Guts gets separated from Griffith and Casca. Griffith picks up Casca and cradles her while standing. When a dark substance similar to what happened during the incarnation ceremony surrounds everything and everyone, he mounts Zod and leaves with Casca as his captive. Once again, he broke Guts completely by taking away the one he loves the most. Flying down from a sky path, Zod descends to the port of Falconia, where several waiting band members welcome his and Griffith's return. When he steps down from Zod with Casca still in his arms, Griffith shows an obvious smirk. Sometime after returning to Falconia, Irvine tells Griffith that Casca has been put back to sleep after she tried to escape, describing her as a bird resting in a cage. Griffith simply says, "the East," while looking at the World Tree.